Shall we start? Yeah?
Yeah.
Great. Oh, so we're recording now. Okay. So, good evening, morning, afternoon, everyone. Welcome to this session with Marcella. So, Marcella is the founder of Fierce Embodiment and teaches men and women to release all beliefs, hurts, fears, and the restrictive way they are held in their bodies today. She trained extensively with the Greenberg method for over 18 years and continued her development with embodied movement training, body mind centering, embodied flow yoga, and motion theater. I'm going to say better. Marcella worked with a wide variety of chronic conditions, debilitating trauma, as well as the cuts of everyday life and how they limit us for more than 20 years. She offers a rich variety of body-centered tools to guide clients through trauma and emotional challenges, such as fear, shame, humiliation, and anger, somatic bodywork, movement training, breath, and expressive arts. So welcome, Marcella.
Thank
Really
you.
glad you're here.
Thank you.
So before we start, there's something I found really interesting that you wanted to do, and you mentioned in your bio, is the cuts of everyday life.
Yeah.
So can you tell us a little bit more about that?
Yeah. Well, the word trauma is like kind of one of these buzzwords of the day, right?
Absolutely.
Like embodiment and tantra, and there's these terms that I think get tossed around, and they have really kind of important meaning, but they get a bit diluted. And so when I spoke to Karina and she asked me, what would you like to do? I thought, well, I want people to understand that there is trauma reflected in their everyday reactions. Absolutely. And to give tools of entry through the body to open up those reactions so that you have more options actually in your life. Okay. And so while many of us have experienced big moments of trauma and those that unquestionably left their mark on us, a lot of the times it was the smaller scenarios that happened on a repetitive basis. Say like being in a family and somebody in the family was always running late, but you were in a family and you had to move as a unit. So you had to somehow conform your experience to theirs because the person who was running late got to dictate the outcome. Or a situation where there were heavy moods in the household. And so you'd come in maybe full of energy from school, or maybe even full of something that had happened that had frightened you or hurt you, and yet there was this thickness of mood in the air, and as little bodies, we feel everything. We soak it in. We can't comprehend it, but we feel it. Mm. And then we, developed ways to deal with it that we've perfected over the years of our lives. And then today something happens that triggers the same thing. And we're left in a situation that keeps repeating itself, that damages our hearts, it damages our self-expression, it damages how we connect with others and how we connect to the world. Yeah. So I just see these tiny cuts that aren't actually so tiny. Yeah. I see them as really important sources of energy and resource and healing, actually. Yeah. So I guess that's why I wanted to bring trauma and take it from being this sort of heavily laden word and idea and kind of bring it back and go, okay, well, there's something happening here that I know wants an opening.
Absolutely.
Right. So how do I find that?
Great.
And also many people, when they hear the word trauma, they just sort of,
Yeah.
I don't have any trauma because of that fact, because they think it only has to do with sexual abuse and physical abuse and, being involved in a war or experiencing some sort of natural disaster. But it happened often, all the time, left its mark on our bodies, and we shaped ourselves around it.
Yeah, absolutely. Beautiful. Yeah. I think there's something for some people who've seen the other session during the week. Peter Levine was mentioning that there's trauma that eventually, if we live this situation in adulthood, we would be able to handle it. But that little child, we just don't know how to do it if we don't have any support for that.
Yeah, exactly. And also because our bodies are little, right?
Yes.
And so if we have an experience that wakes up fear in our bodies, it's a tremendous amount of energy for a little being to actually absorb and digest. And it means that all of the circumstances have to be perfect, right? For that little body to be able to go, not cognitively, but like whoosh, I have this strong wave of, say, terror in my body. And I'm going, and my body naturally, just like an animal, right? You'll breathe, you'll move, you'll shake, you'll writhe, you'll do whatever's necessary to then ride that wave of intensity until the end. So if we had the perfect circumstances growing up, no problem, right? We would be just like the animals that we see around us, the wild animals that are doing this. But we don't have the circumstances. And so that's where we begin to see, okay, it's not safe to allow myself this full experience. So somehow our bodies also know, because we want to survive, right? So our bodies also know, I have to create something that feels safe in this moment, which may mean that you're playing with your peers at a, when you're 7, 8, 9, 10 years old, and something you get made fun of, right? And it hurts. But if you show that it hurts, they may continue to make fun of you. Like somehow we intuitively know that there might be more danger if we allowed the fullness of this experience. And so instead, oh no, I'm fine. I don't hurt. And we lessen our body experience. Mm-hmm. We contain it. And in Peter Levine's demonstration, I forget that thing that he had, that he was working with, right? That ball.
Absolutely.
But it's the perfect example. It's this perfect replication of, okay, so either you've got
someone say the Hoberman sphere. Yeah.
Thank you, Andrea. Hoberman sphere. I don't think I'll remember that, but I'll remember this. Right?
Yeah.
But in any case, this is an embodied state, but also this is an embodied state. And so if we've learned to constantly create this, to then start to move into this means that we're going to have to feel the energy of what we haven't wanted to feel until now. Right? Mm-hmm. So like if I get today, let's say something triggers my experience of rejection, which I think for the most part, we can all relate to rejection, right? Sure. So And the tiniest things can trigger it. You send an SMS with excitement and hope to a friend, like, let's get together. You don't hear back from them. You send out an invitation, you get some replies. You walk in your front door with exciting news. Your partner is in a bad mood and doesn't pay you any attention. Right? There's like constant little moments where we aren't met by life in the same way that we want to be met. Right? So it wakes up rejection, and however your body has wrapped itself around that energy of rejection, that energy of hurt, of disconnect, right? So when that happens, that's that contracted thing, which may show up as you become really weepy. It may show up as you become kind of cold and, oh, okay, fine, you're going to be that way. I don't care about you. It may wake up an anxiousness, and then you start to get really frantic and busy with your life with kind of aimless energy. And so in the moment though, so like if that happens over and over and you don't actually ever let the flow of hurt complete itself, then you're essentially staying in this very contracted sphere, this contracted embodiment. To not do that, to start to soften, will mean that you have to meet also the energy of the past.
Absolutely.
Right? And that cannot happen all at once.
True.
Because it's just too much. It's too much. If I have to meet, if I decide I'm going to work with rejection, like that's something that's really taking from my life, and it's limiting me, and it is making me not dare to do certain things or to reach out to people. So I'm going to look at it. If I walked in thinking that I had to kind of like cut my heart open and feel all of the grief and all of the pain and all of those moments of where I wasn't chosen, I wouldn't do it. I would say, no, like I can't afford that, right? It's too much. Well, that it was too much back when we were little, but it's actually like today, you have a chance to do something a little bit different. You have a chance to say, I'm going to breathe more in this situation, soften my shoulders, for example, get my feet on the ground, place myself here, and then, maybe a little wave of heartache. I can let it pass through me. Maybe a little bit more. And every time we learn to do that a little bit more, right? So we just start to expand a little bit more. I think the magic of that is that you trust yourself and you shift the old story, right? Like you start to see, oh, he's not actually rejecting me. He's just really stressed out right now. Or, oh, they aren't actually rejecting me. My email went to junk mail.
Yeah, so we see a different perspective of the situation.
Absolutely. You connect to reality, right?
Absolutely.
Like I think that in the last exercise, I watched a short portion of the last presenter, and he kept talking about being present, right? But that's it. Like you connect to what's real, and I think this is the beauty of the body, because it does feel what's real, and the more we tap into it and allow our sensations and don't hold on to them in this old storied way, the more we see options and possibility, and we aren't reduced by the circumstances.
Absolutely. That's beautiful. Someone is asking, Michelle is asking, does this have to do with somatic coaching? So I guess the question is like, is it what you do that would label as somatic coaching?
I guess you could call it that. You know, you could call it somatic coaching, but look, when I started to do this work 23 years ago, Peter Levine was around, but I don't think it was called somatic experiencing back then. People just kept talking to me about Peter Levine. I studied a particular work that is called the Grinberg method, and it essentially is an approach to the body. Even somatic was not a term that was thrown out a lot. So it works, somatic coaching, but here's the difference. I think when I think about coaching, my own personal experience is that I think about that as being sort of like a follow these steps to get to a destination or an outcome. And what I'm looking at is, right, goal-oriented. Thank you, Joe. So the danger of having a goal, orientation, like I have worked with clients that said, I got really stuck in resentment and I wanted to arrive at compassion and generosity. And I said, well, you have no idea where you're going to arrive when you undo how you're holding on to resentment. And you may miss steps along the way, and you may, override some very important energy that you have to feel in your body. Right? So if I look at resentment, which I also think is something that is pretty common for most of us humans, right?
Absolutely.
So I used to get stuck in resentment all the time. And you guys can think about this now, like an area where you might start to resent something or somebody, and think of like, how do you feel that in your body? So when I would resent, I would tighten my solar plexus, and I'd get very like hard in my chest, and I'd harden my neck, and it would become, in my own mind, whether the person was there or not, it would become a battle. Like, how dare they this and how dare they that, and I'll show them. But it was all sort of me relating to me in some invented story. In order for me to undo the resentment, I had to feel a lot of really uncomfortable things. I had to feel moments of impotence and powerlessness. I had to feel a lot of hurt from rejection. I had to feel what it feels like to not be wanted. I had to feel hate, because I hated to be treated that way, right? And so, yes, physical pain for sure, because you're wrapping yourself around it, but I can address that more. But so I had to go through those waves of undoing the coping mechanism of toughness, going to the deeper layers that I felt in my body. And that's oftentimes where we get caught, because that's where it feels completely unsafe. And that's where I would say you need to find a place where you can go and you have the circumstances that will hold you, so that it is completely safe to go through those experiences.
Perfect.
In doing that, then on the other side, I didn't decide I'm going to go from resentment to compassion, right? So this is why it's not a goal-oriented thing. It's, here's where I am with resentment. If I soften that, my body starts to feel more things, starts to feel essentially the energies around which I built my coping mechanism. And then as my body learns to allow that intensity of energy, and take it in and absorb it. And then I become this new embodiment of energy. Quite naturally, I'll occupy a new space. And then the possibility is that, okay, well then you like get a sense of what is this new space. You know, if you've gone from this and you've moved through the discomfort and suddenly you are this, what is that? Is your chest lighter? Is your belly released? Do you get a sense, a wider sense of space? And then do you have a kind of lightness to your way of thinking and emoting and being? And do you potentially feel trusting in life? And then from there, you might go back to the person that triggered the resentment in the first place. And you might, you know, there's no way you wouldn't respond to this person differently. It's not possible. If you have moved from this to this without determining what this is, but trusting that your body can find it, then automatically you have more options of interacting with another person. So it's a long answer to the question about somatic coaching, but I think that I'm hoping that answered the question.
Sure. Then I think a lot of people are getting curious a little bit on how you do it. Do you have maybe an exercise we can practice so people can have a sense of?
Yes. What I would like you to do is I would like you to think about in the last day or two or maybe 3, a moment where you were rejected. A moment where that hasn't been resolved yet, all right? So something that is still alive in your body. And you can close your eyes as you do this. And feel in your body how you're holding on to this rejection. And it might help right now, since it's late for many of you, to just notice it in your upper body, in your shoulders, and your neck, your jaw, your forehead. Just how are you shaping yourself around this rejection? And feel it without needing to undo it. Just effort, collapse, energy maybe that's moving in your body. And then what I'm going to ask you to do is to intensify the effort that you feel. So intensify, if there's effort in your shoulders, become more that effort. If there's a tightening in your belly, become more the tightening. And just become the one who got rejected. And notice what your overall energy is. What your overall experience or expression of you is in your room right now, in your home. Yeah, very tense for sure, yeah? And now I want you to think about what did you want to happen that didn't happen? What was it that you desired that didn't happen? And now as you do that, begin to soften the effort. Breathing much more deeply than you have up until this point. And just continue to soften and giving space. Remembering what you wanted to happen that didn't happen. breathing more fully and more deeply. Get your body back by feeling your feet on the ground or wherever your body is touching earth. Continue to breathe, continue to soften. So we emphasize the upper body. So you soften the upper body even more. If there's a little bit of movement that naturally begins to emerge, allowing that little bit of movement. Taking a few deep, full breaths. And with each exhale, just for now, letting go of what you wanted. And yeah, breathing deeper in this moment absolutely requires, it demands of you. Because our reaction is to become smaller and breathe less and take in less of life and put out less of life. So there's a moment of courage right there. There's a moment of saying, okay, I'm going to agree to feel this sadness or this pain or however you would phrase not this rejection and how it feels in your body. But without reducing yourself, without any sort of reduction in the space that you occupy with your body. Now, I want you to go to one area of the body that maybe is still kind of holding on. Somebody wrote that their jaw was very, very tense. And go to that one area. It might be one shoulder. It might be your jaw. It might be your brow. And just as a physical practice right now, right? You're going to breathe and just intensify what you're doing there. Back of the head. Yeah. So like back of the head might be to intensify your neck. Intensify the effort. We're just going to do this for 20 more seconds because I know it's intense, but really just physical, but feel the power that you can put there in your body because it's your power. It's your energy. It's your body's capability. And now completely release it. And breathe as fully as you can. Make any kind of noise you need to make any kind of movement. If there is some sadness or some grief, can you tap into this as a physical flow in your body? Can you expand instead of contract with the feeling? So it's not about reducing the feeling of sadness or hurt. It's about learning in your body to expand your experience. Take a few more really full, deep breaths. Move whatever you need to move. And trust that this is the way your body is going to move to the next experience. This is the way your body is taking something that is repetitive and softening it so that you have a wider, richer, broader experience, something that is much more three-dimensional. And take a moment now as you're opening your eyes and coming back. And I know some of you are writing some pretty beautiful things. I want to read them, but I wanted to give this to Stephanie to manage. But what I'd like you to do right now is just, even if you've got a notepad or something, to jot down or take note for yourself of what's different. What is different in the way that you experience yourself, in the way that you, in maybe areas that you feel of your body. Melody felt the same, okay. In the way that you relate to the rejection. And it may be subtle. Marina felt empowered. Softened, larger. Wonderful. I'm just giving some chance for you guys to write and to read what you're writing.
Yeah.
Highly, yeah, that's empty.
Yeah, there's a lot of aliveness in space, and that's beautiful.
Relieved as hell.
That's a nice one.
That's a nice one.
Oh, someone said resentment is gone.
Nice.
Mm.
Look, what I can tell you guys, I don't know, maybe we did that for 4 or 5 minutes. Is that true? Like,
That's beautiful.
this is a practice that I do often. And so, yeah, I'm going to keep letting those come in.
Yeah, so a lot of people mention the chest,
Mm-hmm.
right?
Yeah. Yeah.
Chest more expansive and more space in the chest, and someone said like chest burning somehow. So that's really interesting that they have a
I
common.
mean, you know, in like a very cliche sort of way, you can say, well, our heart's here, so of course. And yes, that's true, but it's also, you know, it is where we greet the world. So when we're rejected, boom, we're going to just collapse and hold in lungs and sorrow. Yeah. So then I have a question for people that maybe are writing a little bit more of the emotional experience too, is that could you expand and still hold this emotional experience? Because this is what we're talking about. We're not saying to not feel the intensity of what your life experience is. Nice, Johnny, thank you. What we're saying is that life happens, and it reminds us of, you know, it wakes up different body memory. So can we go from this to this and still have the same situation in our life, and then continue to expand and expand? What we're doing is we're getting back our resourcefulness, and we're getting back our basic trust that we are a part of life.
I found it really beautiful, something you said during the exercise, that was, what did you want to happen that didn't happen?
Mm-hmm.
I think it's something people maybe don't consider when they're really small and, you know, into their body and thinking about all the negative
Right.
script we have, right?
Yeah. And also because if I reach out and I have a certain wish of connection, right? And it doesn't meet you, it doesn't meet what you want in that particular moment. You know, do I keep directing myself to this, or do I maintain my desire for something that I want, the energy of something that I want? Do I still hold that, but disconnect it from a specific outcome? And that is absolutely a capacity of the body. You know, I teach a lot about longing and trust, and how our response to shame and this feeling of being not good enough reduces our trust, and it reduces our trust in our desires and our longings and that energy of want. But if we can go back to the body and we can say, look, like, I just want to want. I have these things that I want. And I want them no matter what. And you know, whoever you are, may not want the same thing at the same time. I have a choice then. Do I reduce myself and become the rejected one who's not wanted and go into history? Or do I maintain the clarity and fullness of my body and my full, deep self-respect, and know that this is a want of mine and I'm going to hold it with as much energy as I can, and I'm willing to hold it through the various moments of disappointment when life doesn't bring me what I desire, when you know, when I feel roadblocks. Can I hold it all? And this is the beauty of the body, because I trust that you can. I trust that we can get our dignity back and we can get our strength back, and learning what takes it away, right? Learning those triggers, and then how we become small, like what you just did. And then learning, okay, well, can I unite essentially the old pains and the old shames and the old emotions of the old fears, and can I merge them into my body today? And then what does that bring me? And then how do I approach life?
Absolutely. That's beautiful. And how can you hold all the hard emotions into your body to something? It's really empowering, I think, to be able to hold it. And I think that's what people usually are not aware of, is that we can hold the pain and shame and rejection. And
well, it's there anyway.
It is, of course.
Right? It's just that we're holding it in a contracted way.
Yeah.
Right? And I would say somebody just wrote, it needs to be released. And I would say, yes, it needs to be released from the way that it's held. But my caution there is that a lot of times when I'm initially working with these really potent emotions of shame, of rage, of grief, of deep hurt, when I'm initially working with those, people just want to be rid of them and to feel better. And believe me when I say I get it. Once I've learned that, this warm pool of shame that I feel in my low belly, now that I've released it, I can actually let that move through my body. I can breathe and expand with it, and then I occupy new space. So it doesn't just has to be released, it has to actually be integrated and move through you until it reaches its natural kind of resting point, you know, just like like these waves.
Waves, absolutely.
Yeah. Right. It's kind of like when somebody's, this is a very basic example, but, you know, somebody comes in and they say, oh, like I have really bad posture, you know, I have to sit up straight. And I think, well, I don't know where you got that rule that you had to sit up straight, but what I do know is that from this to this isn't sustainable. The body needs to sort of learn its new position and learn its new integration of what will open up.
Absolutely. So some people are talking about being held.
Mm-hmm.
So how would you explain that in your exercise? Because I see a lot of comments say that to be seen and to be held. That is, I guess, something that
the earth is holding us all the time.
Beautiful.
She never stops, ever. We disconnect from her all the time. We are honestly held all the time.
Yes.
So Yeah,
Hippolyte mentioned it during today, that, you know, we had gravity and anti-gravity. So all the time the earth is supporting us
all the time. So when I'm out and about, and let's say I can feel my energy kind of getting a little bit erratic, and I just feel my feet on the ground. And I've had to practice that over and over because it wasn't a natural thing for me to go to. But this is what I would say, yeah, Pachamama, yeah. Is that is we have gotten so disconnected from earth, from the elements. And the more that we learn to deeply connect in our bodies, because we hold these qualities in us. Your feet are supporting you. They are holding you. Your pelvis is holding magic, right? Your rib cage is holding your hearts and your lungs. Your belly is holding all of your internal organs. Like and then, like, you know, the air is surrounding us and holding us all the time. And so I guess what I would say on that, when I hear like the being held and being seen, I'm hesitant only because it feels like there's still some sort of like emotion that hasn't been worked through in that. Because I work with very potent emotions. I work with shame intensively, and grief, and okay, but I trust that your body can hold it because it already is. It just hasn't learned how to move it. And then I trust that the earth holds us all the time.
Yeah, beautiful.
So that's about the holding. Okay. About the being seen. When we shrink and contract, we have decided to not show ourselves to the world. It can be quite scary, and that's where the old trauma can come out, because in order to say, I'm going to walk into this scenario where I normally withdraw, and I'm going to breathe. I'm going to feel my body more. It will mean that you're going to be seen, so old fear might wake up. But it's also, you have a lot of agency in that, to be seen. To, like, if your skin is alive with your energy, and your breathing and your muscles are feeling the blood flow through them, and you tap into your bones, you will be seen. There's an exercise that I can offer you to do maybe tomorrow for those of you who are going to bed soon. When you go out for a walk, notice that nature is looking at you all the time. It's not a one-way street, and you'll start to learn what it feels like to be seen all the time, and that's a practice.
That's beautiful. It reminds me, you know, like when the children don't want to be seen and they do like this, you know, and the rest of the body is just there.
Yeah, I hear, like, somebody said "out" to be seen, and yeah, like, but here's the thing that I would say. I don't know how to. I think her name was Seja or some Seja.
Yes, Seja. Yes.
Is that it's our choice. It is always our choice. And yeah, your cat's watching you all the time. Exactly. I have a new kitty, and it's been an amazing experience of constant life. So you have to ask, what do you lose out on by not allowing, like, by not enlivening your body and bringing all of yourself? What do you miss out on? Do you miss out on bringing your incredible creative potential into the world? Do you miss out on deep connection with other people? Do you miss out on expressing some talent that you've always wanted to express. And the word safe is kind of popping up on my screen there. As I said, when you go from this to this, you will have to go through layers where it doesn't feel safe. Because in your past, in your history, it didn't. So you don't have to go from this to this, right? You don't have to suddenly burst onto the scene. That's not required. Choose a situation or two where you know that you kind of withdraw, and choose to breathe instead and feel your feet on the ground. That's a first step. Second step might be softening your shoulders. Not pushing them back, but just softening your shoulders. Another thing might be to feel your back against the chair, because your back has that presence. And all of this, they're little steps that start to imbue you with trust. Physical trust, right? I'm not saying to trust everybody around you, because not everybody around you should be trusted. Okay. But that you trust that you can respond to life as you need to.
Beautiful. So there was a question a few minutes ago. Some people were talking about freezing response. Mm-hmm. So what do we do when someone has a freezing response? How would you do that?
It's very much the same process of what I offered you with the rejection. The difference is that there's a lot of fear in a freezing response, right? So what I would suggest, what I can offer, is that you begin to look at where are the situations in your life that are happening where you freeze. And then look at what you do with your breath. Choose 2, maybe 3 areas in your body, maybe 3, until you have, kind of more access. Maybe choose 1 or 2. Chest, it can be your solar plexus. And you have a moment of, if you're in the situation, say you're in a meeting and you have to speak. And normally you freeze and you shut up, right? 20 seconds max, you just kind of tighten slightly the area that you're used to tightening. And then you soften. And you take a few breaths. Already when you do that, you're not freezing. Already. But I'm very aware, and this is like with the freezing reaction, if we go back to the subject of this talk, it's about the smaller cuts. And I am incredibly aware that those smaller cuts are connected often to deeper trauma, right? So that there, in those freezing moments, there can be an immense amount of terror. That requires a practitioner who can hold you, quite literally create a space that your body goes in and feels held. And then you learn to let that energy move through you.
Yeah. So that's what some people were commenting, when it's really complex trauma, it's better to be held by a practitioner.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And then, but the thing is that the way that I work, and I imagine a lot of people today, is that my immense wish is that you learn to trust yourself, so that I'm happy to guide you through it and to facilitate you through it, and to kind of wake up and teach you, like, okay, so notice that, there's a feeling, say, in your deep low belly that you want to run from. Let's describe it. How potent is it? How does it move? How deep is it? Is it fast? Is it slow? As you drop into it in a physical way, you begin to soften your reaction against it, because it becomes part of you. So you just gently learn to let these waves of fear or grief or terror, whatever names we put on it, you learn to let them flow in your body as a physical experience. And then in doing that, you have more of yourself. You will walk out of a session or a practice differently than when you walked in.
Beautiful. So some people are mentioning, I'm really appreciative with what they call self-trust, the way you describe it and the way you teach it. So there's a lot of appreciation there. Anyone?
Can I just mention something on that?
Of course, please.
On trust. All these reactions that happen to us where we shrink, where we freeze, where we erase parts of ourselves, right? Like if we cut off from our legs in these moments of overwhelm and our head is spinning like crazy, we're not only not trusting ourselves, but we aren't trusting life. So that when you learn to embody yourself differently, when you learn to embody yourself from a place where you're willing to have these sensations, you're not disconnected from life around you. Trust is quite natural. You will trust yourself, yes, but it's even bigger than that. You'll trust that life is working, right? Life is happening, it's going on, there's energy, there are opportunities, options there, and you'll trust yourself in those more difficult moments. You'll know that you can handle loss, that you can handle grief, that you don't have to get stuck in shame. You start to trust your value. So when we say self-trust, and if that's the way you have to hold it, fantastic. But for me, it's actually even more profound than that.
Great. Thank you. So someone is asking, I've seen it a couple of times, if you can quickly go over the steps of the previous exercise. So I guess it's, when you...
Yeah. You took a situation, and if you want to practice that on your own, what I can suggest now, depending on how vibrant your embodiment practice is from personal practice, how much you feel very resourced, you can work with smaller or bigger situations, and I'll leave that up to you. And I can also tell you that I do online sessions to guide people exactly in this way. But you look at a trigger and you take a moment, and sometimes it helps to write it down, to describe the situation. What happened? What didn't happen that you wanted to happen? And then you go to your body. You just put the writing aside. You go to your body and you notice 2, maybe 3 areas where your body has become more contracted or shrunk, collapsed, hard, rigid, weak. It's up to you to notice and to choose. And I would say really, like, if you choose 2 areas and you focus on those 2 areas, I promise you your whole body will engage. Then we took about 30 seconds to 45 seconds. And for now, that's really enough to take the effort and make it a little bit stronger. And in that effort, when you're working with rejection specifically, you look at, what did you want that didn't happen? What did you really want to happen? Then you're going to soften. And you're going to allow the want and whatever accompanies it. If it's sadness, it could be anger, frustration, following it on a physical basis and continuing to soften the body. And letting yourself want what you want. And one thing that I didn't do in the exercise because it was short, but when I say that, like as you're transforming it in the body, your want actually becomes unattached to the immediate outcome. So I might say that I want, I'm not sure how I lost your mic, Stephanie.
Yeah, sorry, someone in public.
Yeah.
I'm here.
I might say that I want connection with this specific person, right? But they reject me. So if I pull back and I just let myself want connection, and I'm allowing myself to let go of needing it to be a specific outcome. I want connection, right? And I source that with my breath, and I let my body move with that wish. And then the final thing we did was we went to kind of a holdout area of the body. And then we just contracted it for like 20 seconds, the jaw or the chest, the shoulders, and then let it go. And that's simply to allow a more complete integration of what's happening.
Perfect. Thank you very much. So I think just one question to be sure, for people who want to try on their own. Do you think it would be safer to scale it at the start, like to start with a small trigger before like going with a big one?
For sure, because you have to trust that you can find your way out. Yeah, you have to trust that if you don't take the biggest rejections. That's why, it's the tiny cuts that we're working with. And I would really kind of even take the tiny cuts and, practice it. And then you'll be surprised. I had a scenario where my 5-year-old nephew rejected me. And, he just didn't want any part of me in this one moment. And he's one of the loves of my life. And I was so complete. He had clear boundaries, and I was like, wow, he really stopped me. But I went away, and the body feeling that I had was just massive. It was huge. And I watched myself go through the whole, I was mad at him and how dare he, and I mean he's 5, he's and so like that was a really revealing experience. I went back, I thought, oh, okay, so clearly there's some energy here. And it was, as people spoke about their chest, it was like a storm was happening in my chest, and I thought, okay, well, this I can work with, because I know this child loves me, and there's no question, right? But this I can work with, and I can heal an old story just through this scenario. Just through that, I can heal the old story. So I'm going to use that because it was potent enough. There was energy in the body that I could use. Mm. And it was so revealing. I mean, I'm a little bit embarrassed to share this with you because when it happened, I actually went back to my room that I was in, and we were on vacation together, and I thought, oh my God, look at how I'm reacting to a 5-year-old. It was like I was 13 again, right? Stomping away, I'll show you. But it was wonderful because I rode through it, and I mean, layers of my chest opened, and let's say I actually understood what people meant from my past when they said, stop taking it so personally. I'm sure that many of you have people say that to you, like, don't take it personally. Well, okay, I'd really like to not. It feels like it's happening only to me right now. So yes, tiny scenarios, because they're just as, they hold the potency of our life.
Yeah, beautiful. Well, thank you. A lot of people love your example. So even if you feel a little bit embarrassed, I think it has been really, really helpful for everyone. So thank you very much, Marcella. So because we have just 1 minute left, where can we find you? A lot of people got interested in your method and how they can be helped. So where
So
can we find
my website is the best way.
you? Okay.
And it is called Fierce Embodiment
Mickey,
.com.
okay, I think Mickey, can you just write it down on the chat? I think it would happen.
And yeah, I'd love to hear back, and I would actually love to receive any questions and any places that maybe you got stuck that you need a little bit of guidance through. And I do have a few events coming up. They're in the workshop section, so you can, well, one's in Australia, one's in Europe, one's online. I have a 30 days of embodiment online where you get 10-minute practices a day. And otherwise,
I'm asking where in Europe, sorry.
Where in Europe?
Where in
I'm
Europe?
giving a 6-day movement retreat in Majorca.
Oh, lovely.
Yeah. And I have been traveling. I'm hitting like the end of a big several years of traveling a lot. And I'm moving more into online, and then that would culminate in an in-person experience. But for those of you who are in, Hannah's coming up, and she did the 30 days. She's actually trained quite a bit with me, so you can connect with her. But there's Europe is always going to pull me. I've lived there off and on over the years, and I will never stop coming to Europe. So I just don't know at this point, beyond Majorca, which is in April, what's in the future.
Oh, perfect. Well, I think you would have a lot of people who would enjoy to see you in Europe. And it has been really, really a pleasure to be hosting your session. A lot of people appreciate it. So thank you very much.
Yeah.
And yeah, for anyone who want to first say thank you to Marcella before.
I'm like looking at all the thank yous, and I honestly, everybody, like my heart is just swelling right now. So
yeah, it's been
thank
really
you.
good.
This was such a pleasure, really.
Thank you very much. And for anyone who wants to stay in the coffee break for the next 10 minutes, you can stay right now, and Mickey would create the coffee breaks for you. So just